Good evening. We apologize for the late start. I am Juan Edghill Jr. and thank you to you, our viewers, for joining us this evening. And also to those of you joining us via our Facebook live stream.
And I'm Nalini Singh, and this week we have much to go through.
Yes, we do.
So let's get right into it. Before we go any further, let's just remind everyone that we're currently in the claims and objection period. So we're urging all Guyanese to ensure your name is on the PLE, which is a preliminary list of electors.
Yes.
It's available online at GCOM's website. It is also posted within your polling areas. Anyone who will be 18 as of December 31st, 2019, also have a chance to get registered if you are not on the PLE. First-time registrants do need their original Guyanese birth certificate or a valid passport.
Yes.
Also, once you check your name, the ongoing claims and objection exercise can be used for various transactions, like replacing your photo or changing your address if you move districts. Claims and objections end on November 4th, 2019. For those with inquiries, you can contact Freedom House on its hotline numbers 231-1133, that's 231-1133, 231-5401, and 231-5401. Then there's 231-1148, or on WhatsApp at 611 PPPC. That's for WhatsApp text messaging only.
Yes. So we've had a lot of things coming out from GCOM. And if we talk about the statutory meeting that was held on October 15, 2019, we see that there's now two proposals that is coming from the government, GCOM commissioners, which represent the APNU AFC coalition government. So what the first proposal we can talk about is that the government nominated commissioners at the GCOM office are pushing to have some 20,000 Guyanese voters removed from the National Register of Registrants database, and by extension, from the official list of electors once it is compiled. Now, the grounds being used for such a call is that these persons were registered as voters in 2008, but have not uplifted their national identification cards. Notably, though, in 2015, with over 35,000 identification cards still sitting at GCOM that belong to persons registered since 2008, the then GCOM chairman, Dr. Steve Surge-Bally, had said that persons do not need ID cards to vote at the May 11, 2015 elections. And added to this, it was the current chair, Justice Singh, in a 1998 High Court case, who ruled that the requirement for voters to have a voter ID card in 1997 was ultra vires to Article 59 and 159 of the Constitution. And this was despite a parliamentary agreement they had agreed on to use the ID cards at that time.
Both sides of the
Yes, they had
parliament
agreed that they were going to use
unilateral.
ID cards, and Justice Singh had said that it was ultra vires.
Well, yes,
So-
because the legislation couldn't just
Yes,
legislate her
of course. So
constitutional
she
rights.
ruled in this way.
Yes.
So, and this was when Esther Pereira, PNC supporter, petitioned the High Court set aside the results of the 1997 elections. And this proposal by the People's National Congress-led coalition officials at GCOM resulted in strong objections being made by the opposition-nominated GCOM commissioners. So the opposition-nominated commissioners from the PPP side, they're completely rejecting this
Yes.
proposal by the GCOM.
The government-nominated commissioners seem to be proposing a lot of ludicrous things
Yes.
this season. So there's currently a push right now from them to highlight the names of
Yes.
the electors who have not participated in the house-to-house registration
Wow.
on the official list of electors. So the government-nominated GCOM commissioners are arguing somehow the persons who did not participate in house-to-house registration could be involved in multiple or substitute voting. And the opposition-nominated commissioners have made their disagreement with this nonsensical reason absolutely clear. Because it makes sense. If I didn't register, how would I be participating in a multiple or substitute voting versus
Yes.
the person that re-registered?
That's
So they were
correct.
on the list
Yes,
in
so,
two places.
so
kind
the,
of
the
thing.
argument from the government side is really something that is ludicrous.
It's completely ludicrous.
Yes, and something that the viewership should know is that no decision has yet been made on this decision, though. And that
Yes.
is why we have to call
On these issues.
on Justice Singh to act decisively right now. she needs to end this foolishness and this folly that is currently going on at GCOM. The madness now has to come to an end. And I reiterate that Justice Claudette Singh
She does
needs
need to
act.
make a decision.
She needs to make a decision and put an end to what's currently going on at GCOM,
Yes.
the Guyana Elections Commission.
Just get prepared for March 2nd.
Yes. So another issue that is currently dominating, I would say it's prevalent in Guyana is the issue of crime. And the focus on free, fair elections, that is the order of the day. But the recent spate of crimes has also been another key area of focus and concern for many, many Guyanese, and not just living here, but those that are abroad and looking to come back
they're thinking
to
of coming
Guyana.
home and they're scared to come home. Some of them.
That's right, definitely. So we see that the high crime is being felt by all Guyanese, and this is regardless of your race, gender, I think your ethnicity. Everyone is being affected by this crime situation in Guyana. And something to note, Nalini, is the viciousness that is currently being experienced in Guyana by some of these criminals in the crime situation. I mean, there are people that had, we know about the situation on Church Street, the man being strangled with a belt. Just today, someone was robbed and then shot in the leg. I mean, if we look at the other incidences that would have occurred in recent times, the viciousness that of the crimes is completely something that the police force and the minister they really need to address the crime situation. It is completely out of hand at present. Our Guyanese people deserve protection. We are paying our tax dollars. We are compliant to the law. And as such, we need to get protection from this crime situation that is going on.
We do need protection, but we have a minister saying the crime is low. He's not acknowledging the problem.
Not acknowledging the problem.
So on August 9th, he actually said, Security Minister, so this is from DPI, the Department of Public Information, Security Minister Honorable Camarade Ramchan said it may be in the view of some Guyanese to think otherwise because of a few sensational headlines that crime has been decreasingly over the past 4 years. Following this up, on August 13th, Chronicle published a report that said, Ramchan unveils exciting innovative crime-fighting plan. However, on reading the report, his innovative crime-fighting plan turned out to actually be a CARICOM initiative to be piloted in regional schools where surveys were done at primary and secondary school levels. So,
yeah, indeed, and those stats, we still have not seen any police statistics. We have not gotten any statistic. When asked, the police public relations officer had said that he needs clearance from the police commission on release of stats. And the last time that these stats were actually released was for June 2018, right? And that was released on July 13th, 2018. And the release of these stats would actually push government to admit that there is a problem currently in our country. And as you said, they're still not saying that or acknowledging that crime is prevalent in our country.
Well, we had recently from the United Kingdom Security Reform Program Senior Advisor Russell Combe, where he said, we're deeply concerned about security situation, and the sooner we implement those reforms, the better. So this is where we see a gross misuse of resources in the country, where they're wasting ranks of the police force are there to make Granger feel protected and not us.
Indeed, and in light of what has been happening, there are concerns again is becoming a police state.
Yes, there is.
And tonight we have with us in studio a PPPC parliamentarian, which is Mr. Joe Hamilton, to discuss this issue with us. Good night, Mr. Hamilton. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me on your program for the first time, and I hope it wouldn't be the last time.
Yes.
I hope you come back again.
Okay, thank you very much.
So could you explain for us what is a police state, and why is it that Guyanese have to be cognizant or pay attention to what is currently going on in our country with regards to
the important thing, one is this, and I've outlined this as I go about speaking to people on behalf of the PPP Civic at meetings that we have been having across the country. I tend to say to them, forget about the no confidence motion and all the things that have followed.
Yes.
We are at a place in this country where, as citizens, we have to make a decision. It is either we want a democratic state or a dictatorship we will drift into. That is where this place is at. All the actions of unconstitutional and illegal behavior by the Granger government is suggesting to us that if given the chance, this country will drift into dictatorship.
Yes.
And for you that are young, you would not have experienced that.
Yes.
And therefore, for us who are old enough to understand some of the things that have happened under a dictatorship in this country, the 60s, late 60s, 70s,
Yes.
80s, is basically what a government does is attempt to or take away your rights.
Well, they regulated everything, right?
Yeah,
The KSI.
yeah. The right to protest is one of the things. The right to assembly.
Yes.
And so you have, like now, how we could go and articulate at bottom house meetings and thereabout about PPP policy and programs. There was a time in this country when that could not have happened.
Yes.
And therefore, I predicted long time ago, and sometimes people ask me the question, why did you support the PPP? It is because my analysis of David Granger was that he had autocratic and dictatorial tendencies.
Yes.
And therefore, I predicted this is how he would attempt to govern. I say to this country, what I believe is saving us is because we have an elder David Granger and a David Granger that has some medical issues. God forbid, if we had to deal with a David Granger who's healthy and fit at 50 years old. Some of the things that you young people might have heard transpired during the Barnum PPP PNC regime, what would have happened now those things would have paled into comparison.
So there's a lot of lessons from the past we're
Right.
learning.
So one, the thing is, when I came in, you were talking about the deficiency and inefficiencies of the police force,
Yes, right.
dealing with the issue of crime that is facing us. And you would note that in the last 7 days, I'm told, you had about 5 deaths, people
Yes.
brutally murdered by a robbery and all the other things. You're yet to hear from Mr. Granger, you're yet to hear from Mr. Ramjatan. And therefore, even in their unconstitutional state, they still continue to hold on and function.
Yes.
And therefore, no one is saying to this country what we will do to arrest the present situation. Instead of the police resources being used to fight crime and criminality, we have a situation where last Sunday we were told 140 police ranks were assigned to protect Granger over the river.
Well,
100, think about it.
that's a lot of people.
It is suggesting, and I suspect that 140, they didn't count the special, what you call security detail
Yes.
of the president himself, you know? And therefore you would see what is the focus of the government, what is the focus of the police commissioner, seeking to deny people their right to protest, seeking to have people even in their own village. And in this case, last Sunday, it is more pronounced because people were denied the right to assemble even in their own village,
In their own
Yes.
community, right?
in their own community, to traverse in their own streets.
Yes.
And that is how a police state function.
We have a lot of that
Yes.
going around, right? A
Yeah,
lot
no.
of police presence everywhere we're in.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you know, I have said, you know, Juan, that I don't know, you know, and you're a religious man. You know, Proverbs 28:1 said, "If wicked fleeth when no man pursue it."
Yes. Yes,
And that is what you have
And,
presently.
you know, you mentioned that we're very young, so we won't know a lot about the past. There was the Walter Rodney report that we saw that was hit out there. You want to tell us some of the things that was contained in that Walter Rodney report that is relevant to what is currently being done? Why should Guyanese pay attention once again to what is going on based on the contents of this report?
One, if you recall, I spent 3 days. I was a witness at the Walter Rodney Commission of Inquiry. I spent 3 days
3 days.
speaking my truth as I saw it then about what transpired in the period you're asking about. You know, at the end of my testimony, one of the I think the lady from, the judge from Jamaica, she asked a question of me. She said, Mr. Amner, could you say, why would you, recognizing how this can put you in danger, you come forward to speak about what transpired during the period we were investigating? And I said to her, primarily, I was speaking to young people. Primarily, I was saying to young people, never again must you allow this country to go that way, to degenerate into that place. And so you had the Walter Rodney Commission of Inquiry. Of course, it speaks to what transpired, taking away the rights from people, and even where people lost their life in the quest to ensure.
Well, in the report it says it was decided that the party should assume unapologetically its paramountcy over the government, which is merely one of its executive arms.
Well, it is
Isn't that how you think Granger sees?
Well, the point is, if you, Granger, he has said to this country, and that's why I really had difficulty, people who say they're liberals and they're Democrats and so, how they could have supported Granger. And I asked
I don't think we really have that.
I asked a very senior lawyer that the other day, who I know was a supporter of Granger and chastised the PPP during the time. I said, explain to me, if a man comes to you and he says, my mentor, okay, we have agreed that Burnham was a dictator. We have agreed he ran a dictatorship.
Well, he did say God says that.
And if a man says that his mentor was Burnham, his hero was Burnham,
You should be
what
scared.
do you expect him to do? How do you expect him to govern? He didn't say Nelson Mandela is my hero, or or Mahatma Gandhi, or Walter Rodney, or Martin Luther King. He is saying to you that this man that we have agreed was a dictator.
Yes.
He is my hero. He's the man I look up to. And further, he went on to say that, listen, I believe that some of the policies of Burnham,
One of
they are
those,
still relevant today.
well, one of those policies for Burnham was the armed forces must be fully acquainted with the policies of the PNC party. Do you think that's something that Granger pushes for
Yes,
right now to
yes,
have a
because
police
if you remember, in the early stages of Granger, and even the attempt to do it, he talked about bringing back national service in the militaristic type. You know, they have national services in countries. I think the other day the French president was talking. But the national service in those countries is like the Peace Corps type national service. What the Americans that come to this country and they work with our schools and whatever, is national service they're doing. But it's not militaristic type national service. That is the difference. Okay. You know, and the relevance. Mr. Granger talked about bringing back the militia. He talked about bringing back the youth corps. All of those are militaristic type.
which is leading to a police station?
And that is leading to
because
to
one
police.
can say that that Granger, he had issued instructions to the police actually saying quote unquote somebody will pay in Region 1 after the protests that we had on September 19, 2019. Just recently we saw police members pulling down black flags from poles and all sorts of behavior that was going on. So we're seeing now that the police they're being utilized in a way that is not fitting, or not, their mandate is not being carried out the way it's supposed to be, basically. So the police now is receiving instructions from Granger. Can people assume that currently? That the police state is currently existing?
I would say
in our
two
country?
things, two things on this matter. One is that the police commissioner, if he's listening, and the senior ranks of the police force, they must know that it allows now for they, in their own right, appearing at the ICJ to answer charges.
Yes.
Yeah.
So no more you can say, as a functionary of the coercive force of the state,
Yeah.
that I was following orders. More so following orders of a government that all of us, including the Commonwealth and the US and whoever, accept that the government is unconstitutionally illegal.
Yes.
So we need to ensure that the principles, the working policies of our nation, democracy and freedom, are not on the mind now. So thank you for being with us, Joe.
And thank you very much for having me here. I hope I did justice to
The
the discussion
Hopefully we'll bring
the
you back for
discussion
this
and
again.
your program.
So we'll just
Thank
take
you.
a quick ad break, and then we'll talk now about the clear policies and directions to lead our country forward. Yeah, so there's a need to talk about now what the policy and directions we're going forward. So I think the best thing to do is let's start with how we're going to move forward for our First Peoples. So joining us in studio today is to talk to us about the most vulnerable group in our society, one of the most vulnerable groups. Our First People, the Amerindians, is PPPC parliamentarian Nigel Dharamlal. Thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you, Nalini, and
Okay,
thank you, Juan.
yes. Thank you for being
Wish
here with
our
us.
viewers a good evening as well.
Okay, thank you for being with us, Mr. Dharamlal. So we'll just get right into our discussion this evening. So, first question is, what is your position on the coalition's policies for development that supports the interests of Amerindians?
Well,
Country?
the issue of the coalition, the APNU AFC towards Amerindian,
Yes.
has been very vague, and I do not think over the last 4 years they have genuinely pursued a policy
Yes.
or any number of policies that can contribute to the productive development
Yes.
of the hinterland and of our Amerindian people. Specifically, and maybe we can break that down.
Yes.
For Amerindian people and hinterland people, there are some specific things that are required because
Yes.
of the dynamics of their
Yeah.
livelihood. Food security, for example.
Yes.
This government has refused to address food security for Amerindian people. And as a matter of fact, I think every time there's a flood in the hinterland, we even went to the parliament seeking support for the Region 8, for
Yes,
example,
yes.
the Pakaraimas, and the government refused.
Yes.
In terms of land, you know that they have not issued any new land title
Yes.
based on the processes that they would have that delineate the land titling. The titles that they gave out recently,
Yes.
the 5 titles,
Yes, we
they were
were.
all started and completed investigations by the People's Progressive Party
Really?
Civic.
Wow.
The only thing that they would have done was that
The
the
actual
president would
cut the ribbon
actually
kind of
sign
thing.
Wow.
the title,
Yes.
right? So everything had started before. In terms of health and education, I think that is an extremely sore point for Amerindian and hinterland people. People are still dying unnecessarily. Patients are suffering because of a lack of a proper referral system. They're suffering because of lack of drugs and medical supplies and trained personnel in institutions. Employment. One of the first acts of this coalition when they came into government was to
Yes.
dismiss 1,972
Yes.
young Amerindians across
So
Guyana.
from feedback, it seems as if there were lengthy presentations with no commitment to policies, no commitment to provide resources to improve the life of the people in the hinterland.
Well, at the recently concluded
NTC,
session of
yeah.
the National Two Shows Council Conference, something that started since the PPP
Yes.
was in government
Yes.
in 2007.
Mhm.
If you were to make a comparison, when the PPP was in government, successive presidents, Bar Jagdeo and Donna Ramatar, would have sat for a minimum of
Yeah.
2 straight
Yes.
days
Yep.
of the 5 days with our Amerindian leaders.
Yep. Every time.
And discuss, listen to their concerns, and respond to those concerns in terms of how the government can support them.
Yeah.
I've been to all of the NTC
Yes.
conferences since the government changed and the coalition took office. And there has never been one day that Mr. Granger sat with any of the two shows. As a matter of fact, he comes, makes a speech at the opening session, leaves, and that is it. So there is no direction from his regime in terms of how they will treat with Amerindian development.
So it's kind of Lord.
And the NTC therefore
Yes.
serves no purpose for the Amerindian people. This session that he made a 20-minute speech on by repeating the agenda of the NTC, basically,
Was this his
and
longest
offered
speech?
and offered nothing of substance that or anything tangible that leaders can take back into their villages to say, listen, we met with the ministers of government, with the president, and these are the things that we
This
can
is what
expect.
they're-
Yeah, so speaking of actually doing something for our Amerindian brothers and sisters, we know that the PPP has put forward a draft agenda
Right.
for a National Amerindian Development Conference, which I think is something that is very admirable, very progressive. Can you expound on this? This agenda?
Certainly, Juan. Upon our assumption to
Yes,
office
yeah.
in 2020, when we win
Yes,
the
elections.
elections on March 2nd, 2020, we have proposed a national development conference for Amerindians in April of 2020.
Yes.
And it will focus on a number of thematic areas. And I think the most important has to do with economic development
Excellent. Absolutely.
and specific to job creation.
Absolutely.
Amerindian villages will be exposed to enhanced support to their community development
Yes.
plans, as well as specific to this area, training, financial development, financial support,
Yes.
improvement of their infrastructure,
Yes.
those kinds of things. I think a second thematic area that we intend to pursue, this government is adamant, that is the APNU-AFC, they're adamant that Amerindians must not receive anything from the oil and gas sector. They went to the extent in the
Yes.
parliament
Yes.
where Keith Scott basically said that Amerindians, quote unquote, were greedy.
Yeah.
And I know that Schumann was sitting there in the audience, in the gallery, and we even called on the minister at that time to withdraw his comment. He did not.
Yes.
We called on him to apologize.
Yes.
They have refused. The NTC last year called on him to apologize, and he went to the NTC and refused to apologize as well.
Yes.
So oil and gas is going to be one of the core areas that we will be involving our Amerindian people on, so that every community can benefit from the oil and gas resources. Land is probably the most important thing that Amerindians
Yes, absolutely.
That seems to be one.
deal with.
Yes.
And I think that as soon as we get back into office, we will resume the Amerindian land titling program.
Excellent.
And also address in some way a resolution to the conflict management that usually takes place where land is concerned. Healthcare, education, those are critical areas for Amerindian development, and we will also be focused on those thematic areas, improving the facilities, improving our services, continuous supply of drugs and medical supplies, because that is a critical area. Training and support to hinterland development. As a matter of fact, every single Amerindian village in Guyana, since we were in office,
Yes.
had a health post. None were there before. This government, AP and UFC, they have not built a single health post in any of the villages yet. They have not upgraded any either.
Wow.
We also had CHWs, community health workers, trained and placed at those health posts. In terms of education, they speak so much about education, but they're very glib about it. They
Yes.
have not built a
Yeah.
new school in any single village in this entire country, much less the interior. So we have to continue to expand education, improve access. We have to enhance the ICT services within the villages,
Yes.
and the nutrition program for children. Mr. Granger speaks about his breakfast program, but the breakfast program was there long before. The snack
Yes, it was.
school, the school feeding program was there long before when the PPP was in government. So those are things that we will continue to engage in. Housing and water. These are critical things. Water, especially in the Rupununi in the dry season, is critical. So we will have to rehabilitate and further invest in the water infrastructure. We will have to support systems that harness fresh water, rainwater,
Yes.
for our
Absolutely.
Amranian households, and we will have to find ways and means of securing water supplies so that households as well as the livestock, because most villages, if not all, depend on livestock as well.
Yes.
On housing, we started a housing program in I think 9 villages a few years ago when we were in government. This government, they take ownership of it as though they had conceived and initiated it. So we intend to pursue it, and we will put specific budgets in place. The issues of rights, culture, and heritage, those are critical to Amranians, and we intend to consult with our leaders to enhance the Amranian Act. You know, the Act of 2006. The PPP initiated that, and we intend to safeguard the Amranian culture and tradition. Infrastructure development, roads, bridges, those things have to all be rehabilitated. We have to upgrade them. The airstrips, critical. This government, when they came into office, they put VAT on airline tickets, so it became more expensive for Amranians to travel, especially when you're sick, especially when children have to come to school in Georgetown. So, especially for trade. So things become even more expensive.
Even on
Only
cargo,
recently
there
they
was
tried to remove it because it
But
was
they took it off on
Yeah.
all
Du-
these
during the campaign.
airports that weren't being
Exactly.
used.
And then the low carbon development strategy. There's a fundamental difference between the GSDS that Granger has,
Yes.
and the low carbon development strategy of the PPP. We will scrap the GSDS and we will re-implement the low carbon
I still don't
development
know what that
strategy.
is, by the way. I still
The-
have
the
no
green
idea.
state, it is painting everything green.
I
Yeah,
still
literally
don't know
is.
in,
You know,
in
sharing-
terms of something feasible, what or tangible, what it means.
Sharing green T-shirts and to Amranian
everything
2 shows and
green.
painting everything green. Basically, that is what Granger's planned for
So,
a development. There are other concerns. 2 shows have raised the issue of increasing their remuneration. We will look at that, and we intend to, I think,
this
increase it as
agenda
well.
will no doubt build on the PPP success in Amerindian development. But can you also expound on some of the success as it relates to youths?
Well, as I'd indicated earlier, one of our signature projects was the CSO program, the Community Support Officers program, where every single village had up to 20 young people engaged and employed and being paid $30,000 per month. We wanted to continue, we will continue that process. We will expand it to more villages and to increase the numbers. We will also be looking at the hinterland electrification program. Mr. Granger basically stopped that when he came into office.
Yes.
There were 6,000 solar systems that we had bought to give to Riverine and other communities. None receive under Granger. So we have to get that program going. Food security, like I said, is critical. Storage of certain critical seedlings and livestock and those kinds of things we will have to look at and help with Amerindians. The infrastructure, like I said, that has to be improved.
Yes,
We have to
it
make
does.
logistics much cheaper for Amerindian people. The land titling program, we will have to continue it and make sure villages actually benefit from it. Training and development, you know, we started the scholarship program to Cuba, and many Amerindians became doctors, engineers, economists, and so
Yes.
forth, and are now back in villages
Yes.
working.
That's
We have
commendable. Very
to
commendable.
also ensure that that
Yes.
program continues. It has not continued with the Granger regime. Scholarships, we actually built the Amerindian dorm,
Yes.
Hostel?
where school children, not a hostel, a dorm, where school
No.
children, the scholars come to Georgetown and stay. It was built by the PPP. When we left office in 2015, we had already done the design and the budget for this new dorm that was recently completed. So we basically conceived, initiated, all Granger has been doing is
Just putting
taking
the
over,
painting it green.
painting things green. Yeah.
That seems to be his signature move.
Okay, well, these are very commendable insights into what we can expect from a People's Progressive Party civic government come next year, March 3rd. Let's hope. next year, March. We're hoping we know that will be the result next year. Thank you very much, Mr. Darmala. You've certainly highlighted a lot about what is going on currently under this APNU AFC government. It's clearly shown that they do not have the interests of Amerindians at heart, and they clearly do not have a strategy or a plan in place for our Amerindian brothers and sisters. So thank you once again, Mr. Darmala. We hope that you return sometime in the near future to discuss more on
Certainly, and
these,
I'm
on
at your
these
disposal
issues.
and at the disposal of our viewers as well.
Okay, so thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. And also, just a reminder to our viewers, this has been our program this evening. And just remind to our viewers, you can find our program on our Facebook page this week in 60 minutes, where you can watch it anytime, anywhere. So you can go back to that page and revisit. Also, remember to pick up a copy of the Mirror newspaper, where these issues and more are highlighted. So ensure that you find the shop. Also, the Mirror newspaper is available online at mirrornewspaper.com. So you can also pick up and you can discuss and read.
It's
and
on the Mirror's Facebook.
and also on the Mirror's Facebook, the
So,
Mirror's Facebook page.
Thank you.
So you can
Thank
do
you
that.
for being us for most of this last hour. So what we covered was basically we went over some claims and objections. Please remember, if you haven't been registered, please check the list. Make sure you're registered. Get yourself transferred. Get your details in order. Elections are coming up, and the claims and objections are coming soon.
Yes, before we go on there, I just want to tell our viewers that they can actually check to see if they're on the list
Online.
by going to GCOM's Facebook page. There's a slot there that you can type in your ID number, and you can check to see all of your information. So I would urge Guyanese who are here or who are abroad looking to come back to vote, ensure that you go on GCOM's website and ensure that you type to see that your name is in the correct area, your name is registered correctly.
Yes.
You
It's
can see
spelled
which
correctly, your gender's right.
That's right.
'cause
You can see which
fix your-
district
yeah.
also, which district. You can see all of that information. You can see. So I would
We will
urge all
also
Guyanese
post
to
a
do
link
that.
on our Facebook page, so please
Okay.
check This Week in 60 Minutes on Facebook. And if you can't
Yes.
find the GCOM link, it will be posted there. So apart from talking about claims and objections and GCOM shenanigans today, if you tune back into our program later, you can also hear us talk to PPPC's Member of Parliament, Joe Hamilton, about the police state and his plea to citizens. Please remember, your choice of this election is one between a democracy or a dictatorship. So it's
That's
your
correct.
choice, and he did go over the lessons that we did learn from the past. And Joe was very good in warning
Yes,
about
he
the
did. Yes, he
young
was.
Granger
Yes, he
versus
was.
what we have now,
Yes,
and
he
we're
was.
fortunate
Yes, he was.
in that sense. But we do need to be cautious and be wary of a dictator state.
Yes.
Then
yes,
we
it does.
had at the latter end of our program, we had Nigel Darmlao, also another member of parliament for the PP, where he went over what was important for the Amerindian people and touching on the fact how vague this coalition government has been. Their policy seems to be paint everything green. So
Yes. Clearly, there's no strategy in place
No.
for our Amerindian brothers and sisters. There's clearly no strategy in place for any of us
No.
in this country.
it's only if you're geriatric or what was
Yes,
it? You
clearly, or part of that cabal with your friends and families.
So thank you for joining
Yes.
us. Please have a good evening, and you can find this rewatch the rest of this
Yes.
program
And
anytime
remember
you
to
want.
join us. Remember to join us next week.
Yes,
for
we will
an
be here
exhibition.
next week.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.